It's still the Daybreak Show Dec City 101.9 FM, and it's time for Citizens Room. I don't know where the merry-go-round has song from. Well, some are actually smiling, some are actually happy that Christmas is here and it's going to be a bit Christmassy. Talking about the pocket and the bank account, some are looking all gloomy and very moody because they got their money stuck in different schemes this particular Yuletide season. It's very apt and important for us to look at this issue because it underlines they very much talk about values in a society in Nigeria that a lot of people have agreed that it's fast eroding. What are we talking about this morning? Like I mentioned earlier, we're looking at Ponzi schemes without a particular focus on MMM, which of course is the rave of the moment, which has generated a lot of controversy. For some, you may not even know that there are many more Ponzi schemes that are still active in Nigeria. There are about seven that are most talked about that were actually trending in 2016. Against the backdrop of the economic recession in Nigeria, different unorthodox financial schemes gain attraction and attention across the country. The first is one which we talked about, the MMM, the Mavrodian Mondial Money Box, known as MMM, a Ponzi scheme which, of course, has links, direct links to the Mavrodi brothers in faraway Russia. The scheme simply looks like robbing Peter to pay Paul. Some have also questioned the rationale behind the 30% interest rates on investment, wondering which particular type of business anywhere in the world will give you such a high yield or turnover. Some people, what? 40%. Oh, wonderful. Seems you, I hope you didn't get your money stuck in MMM. All right, so before we go into how Ponzi schemes work and what we can actually learn from this, let us quickly look at some other schemes. You have that of Zafond. You also have Zafond, which is also very popular. You have Ultimate Cycler, which is also a peer-to-peer donation business model created by Peter Wolfing, a United States-based network marketer. You also have Givers Forum. Givers Forum is one of the top online money-making Ponzi schemes in Nigeria presently. Just like MMM, Ultimate Cycler, you have Givers Forum concentrating on a community of givers, people who provide each other financial help on the principle of percentage growth. You also have iCharity. Yes, iCharity. That is also getting attention like wildfire in Nigeria. It's also a peer-to-peer donation platform for members to help others in a rather systematic way. You also have crowd rising. Well, one difference about crowd rising is that it's not a company or a business or a corporation. Crowd rising system is not owned by any one individual. It is a semi-automated system created by 5 individuals who are funding and founding members, referred to as the Five Horsemen. This platform is made available worldwide, free of charge. No admin fees, no monthly fees. In fact, there are no fees. So you begin to wonder, how does this work? There's another one called the Get Help Worldwide. It's a trending mutual fund peer-to-peer donation portal in Nigeria today. If you take time to carry out a bit of research as regards these Ponzi schemes, you get to know more about them. But without glamorizing these Ponzi schemes, so what we want to look at this morning is the effect it's actually having, not only on the economy that is already suffering from recession. Some who have said the economy has suffered from recession twice, and that is a very disturbing information coming in this week. You also have the situation whereby Nigerians have the money trapped in the system, especially with MMM. News have it that the MMM scheme has actually relocated to Kenya and Ghana, and that's a bit disturbing. But because MMM suspended cash withdrawals uh, from from the bank accounts of many of the participants, so that created some kind of shock and some kind of buzz in the first week of December, because people were actually waiting for the Christmas period and the New Year to make large and of course huge withdrawals to tackle the season. Agamerio. Yes. 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 Decades ago. Yes. So, mhm. Mhm. By then, maybe. Yes, we have in the studio Alhaji Ola Animashaun, a public affairs analyst and a social commentator, a friend of the house, and together we'll be doing this morning on Citizens Forum at Daybreak Show. You're welcome, Alhaji Ola.
Thank you very much, Tobi and Agumeri.
Well, a lot has been said and done about Ponzi schemes. It is not new to Nigeria. It is not new to the world. And many people had their fingers burned seriously years ago, decades ago. And a little about even 5 years ago when some wonder banks also came in and people lost their life savings. You had pensioners investing their entire pension in these wonder banks and they have nothing to show for it. If you were to answer the question, do Nigerians ever learn from history?
Thank you very much. You see, by the very simple definition of the Ponzi scheme, wherever you want to look at the definition or explanation of what a Ponzi scheme is, you will be marveled at the two words, a kind of fraudulent scam. Those two words are constant. And that presupposes that whoever wants to go into a Ponzi scheme should know at the back of his mind, except if he wants to be in denial, that this is a fraudulent scam. And if human beings are to be, analyzed, you know that we have the tendency to be greedy. It is there. But God gives us that capacity to vary options before us, to look at things critically and make decisions. The best decision, one will say, based on the capacity of the intellect. Somehow, somewhere along the line, most often, some people will want to get carried away because of that tendency to be greedy. And at the end of the day, they might likely get their fingers burnt, as we have been seeing it over the years. So as a fraudulent scheme, that one will expect that Nigerians over the years will have learned lessons from situations that have been happening with the various Ponzi schemes, like you have been trying to, list them out and say, enough of this. But somehow, perhaps because of some peculiar situations that are permeating the economy as of now, the recession and all the stuff that you mentioned, which may not necessarily be enough for somebody to say, I want to go into this, if you look at the intricacies and the risks involved. But then, like we have said, some people will still want to go into it. Yes, there's virtually nothing in life that does not involve risks. But there are risks and there are risks. Some risks, when you sit down, you know that this one is just too much and it's going to be highly consuming. But at the end of the day, you can review some other risks and say, yes, I can venture into this. To an extent, I might be able to maneuver. But where you venture into a risk and you box yourself into a corner in a business that is in the cyber world, that you don't know the investor, they have no fixed address, and you are putting in what they are asking from you, like the Mavroti man said in an interview, is your loose cash. That is an element that most of the investors in the Ponzi scheme, particularly the MMM, have not been looking at. And you can say that in Nigeria, where do people get the loose cash if you are not in a bracket that allows for you to have such a loose cash? What you call a loose cash to some people is a different ball game entirely. But when you look at the bracket of people involved in these schemes, you realize that it's not as if they are the people that are totally out of job. They have some money to play around with, or they have some reserves, or their life earnings, or their saving capacity to fool around with, in quote. It doesn't mean that they are out of job. It is the greed and conspiracy because of the enticing percentages involved, 30 to 40%, that makes them to look at it and say, I don't want to look at the risk, the inherent risk. Yes, because the scheme, as it is designed, is to take care of the first investors, and the subsequent ones is like they are paying for the first investors. So at the end of the day, those who went in first will have benefited. As of this moment, as we are speaking, even as some few days ago, a couple of days ago, I met people who are still interested and trying to convince me to go into the scheme. Not impossible that the scheme may continue to run after the new year, but the bombshell would definitely still come around. Yeah, the world is supposed to be of or for interdependency. There are helps and there are helps, just like there are risks and there are risks. But this one, when you look at it, you know that it's not really much of a help, but a scam. Because the probability that those that will invest at the later stage, when the scheme is suffering from reserves and cash deposits, will lose out is very, very high. So of what help and benefit will the first investors have done to those who are coming in at the tail end of it? In essence, if there is lack of reserves that the operators can dip their hands in to spread around for those who are putting in the money, then there's a problem. There's no way you can have a shock absorber in that instance. So you are going to be at the receiving end, because you are coming at the tail end of it, as against those who came in first to benefit from it.
Okay, Ola Animashaun, let us try to draw some kind of nexus between greed-fueled corruption in Nigeria and the get-rich-quick syndrome, which is prompting a lot of Nigerians to go into these Ponzi schemes. Where do you draw the lines? Do you see a clear-cut case of greed in this case of investing in Ponzi schemes?
Without being obtrusive or offensive to those who are involved in the scheme, suffer some losses when the meltdown came, but then it doesn't mean that I have to withdraw whatever I have there as life savings, while they are telling me that I should use my loose cash and withdraw my life savings and put it in a scheme that is very, very fragile, which can collapse easily, of which I might not even have any, not that you cannot maneuver and outsmart your contemporaries with a given opportunity. We are supposed to be smart in whatever we do, but smartness also have to be with some sense of direction and decorum. If you make a silly mistake, permit me for some words that I'm using, I don't want to feel like I'm rubbing it in on those that had fallen into it, even though some people are still desperate as we are speaking to go into it. But I feel we should do things with a sense of decorum to save ourselves, such that we will not break down totally when the consequences come to haunt us. It's a very difficult one to say. What they have told us is that they have frozen the returns until mid-January, I suppose. Like Tobi was trying to reel out the other time, perhaps out of fear of heavy withdrawals for the Yuletide season, which will affect it and make it crumble. Perhaps it's a strategy by the operators to save themselves, because he has suffered such a thing before in Russia. This very Maviroti man, he suffered it in Russia and people went bankrupt. He ended up getting into jail.
So some people committed suicide.
Yes. So he ended up getting into jail, the MMA man, because it's his brother and a friend of his. He contested an election in jail. I'm coming to your question, please. He contested an election to get to the Russian parliament from jail. And some people had sympathies for him, perhaps some of those who invested in his scheme. He contested that election because he needed what we call, what's this thing we fought against here? Immunity. He needed the immunity from prosecution. And after that, he got himself into trouble again. And somehow, he succeeded in floating that MMM stuff again, got into bankruptcy, and the whole thing is history now. He moved out, went to South Africa, have about the same problem with the investors. He's in Nigeria, and as we are speaking, he's in Ghana and Kenya. See, when you look at the history, you know that it might not easily end well. I don't want to be pessimistic to say that they have lost out. We have to wait till January and see what plays out. But like I said the other time, it is not impossible that the freezing tactics is to allow for a safety net. Perhaps in January, the scheme might come back. But then the bombshell is still likely to come up again. But this time, it could be just all of a sudden more than what people can cope with.
Now, in the case of NMN and this other kind of scheme, they get to be registered. Should we say that they are breaking the law in any way?
How do you get people like this to register? They won't register. They will find a way of running away from it. If it gets to that level, they can even collapse it and float another one. And people will buy into it. It's a strategy. Because the moment they get themselves registered, they are already binded by the laws of the land. But then this is a cyber situation. And the control of the cyber world is a bit of a Herculean task. So that's why they are hiding under that factor of loose cash. Cash that you can play around with. But this is an economy where the real value of the income people have is nothing to write home about. The purchasing power is very low. Our saving capacity is poor. And that's why I have been emphasizing that it is not the ordinary people, the poor people, that are really into this thing. It's people that have some means of livelihood. It's beyond that. The ones of 1,000 naira you are talking of are into those businesses that are regulated by the lottery laws in this country. The Baba Gebus factor, the Go Better Nigeria, all those things, just like the face-to-face of the 70s. You understand me now? Those ones are the ones you find ordinary people of 500, 1,000 going here and there to make bettings and lottery or 100 naira. But when you are talking of 3-digit thousands, 2-digit thousands, millions, up to 3-5 millions, I know of somebody in this state who I cannot mention his or her name, who was even boasting that, well, that's your problem. I came in for, I will make my money fast. Whatever happens after is not my headache. He or she is lucky that she might have made her money. Really.
Well, this scheme started in November 2015.
Yeah.
Some really cashed out.
Yeah, well then the green pattern opted out, played out, and some still got it fine. But now let's still talk about Security Exchange Commission. That's the Security Exchange Commission has said that these Ponzi schemes are yet to be registered. Okay, so in a way, they may be breaking the law. Let me say that. Or shouldn't SEC and other bodies, shouldn't they have done more than just talking about it? Shouldn't they have taken active steps to prosecute this schemes?
How do you prosecute a professional criminal like the Mafuroti? If it were to be somebody in Nigeria doing it, not from Russia, perhaps it would have been very, very easy to an extent. That's when you even consider the factor of the judiciary anyway. But even the one, there's a scheme, what do they call it? I've forgotten. There's an old man that has something to do with the oil exploration and all the rest with Mobile and all those stuffs. Combined success or something like that. He's been on the issue for long. With Mobile, adjourning. So that's for an operator, not to talk of somebody who is about to be prosecuted. Not that it's impossible, but it will be practically impossible to handle somebody from Russia in this instance, except if it's a global, a situation. But for Nigeria to handle him, the best Nigeria can do is to advise. The SEC advised, EFCC, all of them, the central bank told Nigerians, don't go, even the National Assembly, don't go into this thing. It's fraud. I think the best the government could have done is advise and alert Nigerians to the danger. I think the government is incapacitated in terms of prosecuting these people.
Okay, now let me take you back to the issue of values that I mentioned earlier. When we were growing up, it is very sacrosanct that you were told not to earn not to earn where you did not actually work. That means you do not reap where you did not sow. Nigerians are known for dedication, hard work, and the likes, but it seems that is gradually eroding. People expect to get times 10 of what they did not actually work for. How do we begin to shore up our value system? And once again, from the family to the church to the mosque and then the larger society.
Like you rightly said the other time, you talked about the get rich syndrome. They want, everybody wants to ascend the ladder fast. Nobody wants to build up. That has been a problem bedeviling us. The youths, the elderly, we worship money in this country because when you have it, you get recognition. People don't recognize you by whatever intellect you have. If you are intelligent, you are a professor or nothing, and you don't have cash backup to show for it, Nigerians don't respect you. If you are a man of God, you do wonders, and they don't see signs that, oh, money flows and you are in good vehicle, opulence, or present with what you have. Nigerians won't recognize you. We worship money. We love money. We don't love God. So when you have that kind of a situation, it's quite a disaster. Because our value system is much more on material acquisition. And that is quite a dangerous pedestrian. Because those that most of the youths grew up to know have been on this level. So they also want to do it. That is why you will hear an average guy that will tell you, let me get to government and grab my own. Not let me get to government and make situation better. Contribute to my own quota to make a good leverage for the country. Because the people over the places, before he gets there, have been so much engrossed in unnecessary material acquisition, irrespective of how it comes to be. So the risk factor for us is, if we don't take care of our value system and readjust, have a social reorientation, then we are just running around in circles. It's one thing for you to try to bring up your children and make good values in them. It's another thing for the societal impact. If the society is not drifting on the same wavelength that you are operating, then you have to go extra length to making sure that things will not get out of hand after some years. And it's a very, very challenging situation for all of us.
Now, if you were to look at the so-called trauma that some Nigerians who invested in these Ponzi schemes are going through, and the concern before now that there is no money anywhere. People have painted a picture that they are so poor, there is nothing in their pocket. Yet when this scheme was raking in millions and thousands for people, people started bringing money out from nowhere. And then you begin to hear that, I lost 1.1 million, I lost 3 million into it. And you begin to wonder, so you had 3 million? So what were you doing with it? Why were you complaining that there was no money? How do you assess that?
Tobi, have you ever heard an average Nigerian that is well placed telling you that he has money? The same song is, there's no money. Ilule, ilule o kosowolodi. That is the same song everybody will be telling you. Deception of the highest, so that nobody is asking you to tell me you have millions. But you can see it. Money speaks. That's the word. The one who has it does not speak. That is the strategy. So some people still have it. Look at what happened in the last political dispensation. A lot of money are in circulation in the hands of some few elements in this country. Money that is supposed to have been for the general welfare of the citizenry. So people like that will not come out and tell you have money. It is what they do with the money that makes you to suspect that, oh, this guy is loaded. So there is money. This country is not poor. It is just that the money is not cutting across accordingly. It's being hijacked by some elements. Yet there are some who truthfully work as for their money in a very clean way. They also have it. For people like that, I respect them a lot. And I don't expect them to say, oh, I have money, look at me. In a country where the challenge is for the survival of the generality of the populace, those that you can call the higher class are not many. The supposed middle class that is disappearing and reappearing, they are just somehow handful to an extent. The majority are at the below level, poverty level. So the challenge of those that have is that those that do not have will continue to disturb and bother them, and that they can't afford to accommodate. They want to kind of live a life that will give them comfort. So you don't expect them to say there's money there. When they see opportunity that they want to invest in, of course, when you have money, you want to continue multiplying it. So they will go into it. But when greed comes in and they see a scheme like this, in a country where sometimes you don't want to wait for your investment to mature, you can't go into production or service industry, you just feel, I don't like what is going on. Let me look at something else. And you now see something like this that promises you 30-40%. And you have the cash. With greed that you are unable to control, you will go into it.
All right, because of the time we need to go this break for our national news. When we come back, we talk more about the Ponzi scheme. We talk about how people can invest in instead of putting risk in it. Why people may possibly would rather go for Ponzi scheme than putting money or investing money into a business or without that. And also the environment. So we have a conducive environment going out for businesses to thrive. I don't want to look into all of this when we come back. Even after you time to shop, but we still have a mysterious studio with us. All right, we go this short break. We'll be back.
So, citizens from the Daybreak Show, this beautiful Wednesday morning, we're looking at Ponzi schemes with reference to many of the schemes presently in Nigeria getting attention and public scrutiny. You have MMM, you have Ultimate Recycler, you have iCharity, you have Crowd Rising, you have so many of them. And there's a new one now that we left out. Immediately, accounts were suspended in the MMM scheme. You have a new one called NNN. Someone was jokingly telling me yesterday that Tobi, maybe we should start our own and call it OOO. Since I was MMM, now NNN, maybe an OOO will come. We have at the studio Ola Animashaun. Ola Animashaun, let me take it from where I stopped. Do you still believe that Nigerians will go into a new scheme called NNN? And even if there's another one that comes, people will still continue to risk their hard-earned money.
Toby, this is not the first time that a Ponzi scheme will come into Nigeria, and it will not be the last time. Even after the last one, they floated the NNL, another one will still come. If you say XYZ, they will do it. If there's no lettering to use again, they will look for another word to use. It's something that seems to have come to stay because it works on people's greed. Uncontrollable greed, so to say. Let me put it that way. Gloria was trying to say something the other time about the investment climate, why people would not or would be tempted to go to MMM because, but do we say because the investment climate is as it is that it's a dead end? Whatever you put in, even if you cannot maximize your opportunities in whatever investment you have, you can build it up and get a bit from it gradually depending on how much you have done or you have invested into it. Of course, there are challenges in Nigeria when it comes to investment. Is it the manufacturing sector or whatever? The exchange rate, the interest rate, the power problem, energy sector, where you have to, buy diesel to fuel, to do your production, the cost of inputs and everything. But whatever the situation, you cannot say because of that you will not still do something to make ends meet and make little returns from it. Let it build up until the economy improves, where you will have been able to kind of spread your tentacles to a very high extent rather than just jumping all of a sudden into a scheme that has limited promises, that can derail you entirely, and that can make you go bankrupt, and which you don't have any indemnity. You cannot be indemnified. So what is the gain? That is the cross I have with it. I don't blame the people that go there. It's their choice. You have the right to make choices. Some of us make choices that are bad. Some of us make good ones. Some of us are average in our choices. But when you see risks that are very obvious, that could be even life-threatening, and you feel that is the way I want to go, it's your choice. It's all involved. There's one basic problem. We are always in a hurry. We don't want to wait for time for our businesses to mature. We want immediate returns because there are so many pressures on us as an individual, and you want to make returns on whatever you have invested on time so that you can enjoy life and let people know that you are prospering. But then it doesn't mean that as challenging, as callous in quote as the business environment is, it doesn't mean that we can still not endure. Of course, so many variables work against investment in the country as of this day, but that does not mean that we cannot endure and project accordingly, according to what we have on our hands. That is what makes you a good businessman. The challenges, you must be able to contend with the challenges at hand. And like we have been saying, sometimes some people even make the most during the recession time. It depends on how you are able to kind of spread your tentacles and make the best out of it without necessarily being a Shylock.
We have the studio line 0809-868-7344 and also 0909-146-9670. The Twitter handle is also there at Rock City FM. You drop a question or your comments there. We'll be picking them and reading them out. And also the short to pop up 32120. Type Rock ROCA. Leave a space. Let's have a question or a comment and include your name before sending it to 321.
Who's doing? Let's add these messages. This one from Belu about they had to do with the quick take we brought forward earlier. Very poor for the judiciary because they've performed below expectations and then used their powers with the fear of God. Belu Babatunde sent in that one. Give them average mark. Those awarding poor marks should examine themselves too. It is the head of a town. If the head of a town is blind, then the name of the town will be changed to Blind Man Town. Okay, Ayetoro sent in that one. Okay. This one says, studio wanted to remember command clear.
Command clear, that's true.
All right, that's Adiola sending that one. Now, the government is to blame for everything. Why can't our own NNPC and CBN do such schemes like that for us in Nigeria? MMM is a choice. The economy is bad. Dewolu sent in that message. All right.
Well, let me quickly start from Abdul Hakim Ajadi, because he said something about the government. He was blaming the government, not advising. But yes. I think that's not quite right. Almost all agencies of government involved in financial stuff like this advised against the MMM scheme when it came up.
Yes.
The stock exchange, the National Assembly, the Central Bank of Nigeria,
the NAIC.
Almost every agency you can think of said this thing is fraud. Don't go into it. But like one of the SMS said, Nigerians are greedy and they will not listen. I think it's Abe Fagbemi that said that Nigerians will not listen. Yeah, so it's quite unfortunate that we have come to this stage. And the second caller talked about that it's good that because he did it, that for taking care of the school fees. But I think he was lucky. He's one of those that came in at the earlier stage and he made quick gain from it. But don't forget, he said something. He said he made the gain and he stopped immediately after because he saw the inherent risks. That's the second caller. So I think, and he was saying that is those who are not financially stable. I would not want to agree with that statement as well. Those who are not financially stable will not invest 3 digits and 6 digits into a venture like this if you are not financially stable. If you are talking of people who are not financially stable, they are the ones that go into Baba Jebu. I still maintain that. Or the face-to-face of old. Baba Jebu is 50, 100 naira, 2, 3, 500 naira. Those are the ones that are not financial. But whoever can use a 3-digit figure, 2-digit, 3-digit figure, up to 6 digits for a scheme, and a stable scheme like this is relatively, please mark my word, relatively financially stable, but he or she thinks he can master the risk and get the best out of it without knowing that it will take you will continue to go into it. That's the problem with gambling, so to say. You think, oh, I can still get it, I can still get it, I can get more so a scheme that gives you the 30-40% almost within 3-6 months that you have gone into it. You will think it will continue to be like that, not knowing that the bubble will get busted somehow. And going into my dear friend Dr. Okon, he talked about the religious aspect. Now that one is really running away from the religious aspect. I will not even want to talk about Christianity in particular, but I will say generally all the religions. Yeah, and he said the rebuke it factor. Well, that is the normal syndrome. Nobody wants to believe that a negative thing can come from an unstable decision. You still want to believe that rebuke is not my portion, but it's not supposed to be anybody's portion. You are the architect of your success, of your failure. So it's nobody to be blamed. I rebuke it may not really work in this instance. And Kola Wale Joseph said we should wait till mid-January, like we have been saying, hoping that it will not crash. But he also emphasized one factor, that what Nigerians that invested earlier has seen happening now may militate against their coming back. They may not want to reinvest because of the fear of losing out, and that could ultimately make the scheme to crash outrightly. Yeah, that's another angle to it. And Mr. Yinka Adedeibo talked about the human nature and the tendency to want to oppress and the greed factor. We have talked about that severally. So, talking about Mr. Adebeshi's tweet in terms of stocks, shares that has also failed in Nigeria, yes, I also got involved in that. But when it was going good, a lot of us invested in it and we made money out of it. But when the going gets bad and the downturn is there, we know that the shock absorber is there. If you can leave your stocks, your shares and everything there, if the economy improves, you improve with it. You have the choice also to sell it and recoup your money depending on the value it attracts at that time. Well, it's different from this one, that you don't have any indemnity. You don't have any shock absorber. Garbage in, garbage out. You go in without caution and you go out with disaster. This is different from the stock exchange. It collapses and it can collapse, but then it can also pick up as the economy improves. It's not quite automatic, but you have the choice to sell what you have depending on the value it attracts at that time. So it's not totally a loss for you when you're into shares and stocks. As we have experienced, it failed, but you can still make some gains. It's different from the Ponzi scheme. And as per Mr. Agbe Fagbemi, like I said, he said Nigerians don't listen and the government should provide jobs. Yes, I think government needs to do more in terms of employment opportunities, provision of jobs. It doesn't mean that government must employ everybody. They must create enabling environment for those who can also be self-engaged towards making a living for themselves. But it's still not enough, because if you say government has to provide you and the job is there for you and you made the money and you are unable to utilize the money the way it should be utilized, rather than going into something like of this nature, then you have squandered everything as far as I'm concerned. And that's the way I think it goes. And concerning Akorede Kamil, the MMM name in Yoruba parlance, they say, I think it's two ways. One is Moko, Mogbe, Modaron. That is Moko Owo, Mogbe Temi. And but another angle to it is Moku, Mogbe, Modaron. Moku, Mogbe, Modaron is, I don't know how they came about that, but it's quite funny, really.
All right, let's go back to the calls. Has frustrated many into the program due to unpaid salaries and gratuities, corporate deductions, and lavish spendings by governors, etc. MOK from Ayetoro sent in that message. Impatience, greed, covetousness, and lack of faith in God and in themselves. This can also be seen in the rich. They would not invest like Dangote. They rather trade and do contracts where there is even likelihood of making billions without investing a copper. Why? Almost 60 years after independence, we have for the first time in our history important toothpick, pencils, etc. Which are just being planned to be produced. Yenkadi Denbo sent in that one. It's quite unfortunate for some of Nigerian people because some of our people want to succeed at all costs without thinking about the repercussions. I'm appealing to the government to intervene in this issue by stripping this agency out of this country because some of our people will still go and invest again. BC Okwaride sent in that one. I'm afraid the Ponzi schemes can only thrive in a poverty-stricken economy like we have in Nigeria. However, the concept of poverty is debatable, especially when we consider the quantum of money that have been trapped so far. Imagine what that 11 billion naira, if invested in SMEs, would mean to an economy in a self-infested recession. As a people, rich or poor, elite and illiterate, I think there is something fundamentally wrong with us. Thanks. Oloyede Ismail from Ashiro sent in that one. And this one says, good morning. There is a dead body beside Sophia Lakwe School, Olumore Housing Last Bus Stop. Kindly help get in touch with relevant authorities. Thanks. Thanks for your message. Even though you did not add your name, but if that can be confirmed quickly, there's a body at Sophia Lakwe School, Olumore Housing at the last bus stop. The Ministry of Environment and Health going to go there and see how to evacuate the body. Ola Animashaun, your final submission and reactions to the last set of calls.
A lot of calls, a lot of submissions. Mental capacity, ignorance and common sense, the losses in the stock exchange before, survival instincts, and a whole lot of others, collapse of Allied Bank and others. The long and short of it, life is full of challenges. We are bound to make mistakes, but some mistakes we should be careful not to fall into wrong hands at the initial stage. We have the opportunity from the Almighty God. He made us different from, my apologies, the animals. He gives us the intellect to be able to decide between the good and the bad. Nothing is totally good and nothing is totally bad. But you can see the dangers inherent in some things when you look at it critically. Life is full of risks, no doubt. But then there are some risks that are not worth venturing into, particularly if they could threaten the very essence of your existence, life itself. Because we've had stories of people that committed suicide along the line, life savings gone into drain. Of what good is it if you have to commit what you can deploy appropriately with common sense and endurance despite the failures in some aspects of governance that are militating against the basic necessities of life? It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go and get yourself plunged into untimely death, either physically, mentally, spiritually, or what sense of it. Do what you have to do wisely. Don't play into the hands of dubious and fraudulent elements, and save yourselves from unusual and unnecessary collapse. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alhaji Ola Animashaun. It's been wonderful having you on the show this morning. I appreciate you for honoring our invitation. We also want to appreciate those who called, those who sent in their messages, and those who also tweeted their comments and contributions on the show. Tomorrow is another day on the Daybreak Show. We start as early as 7 a.m. with today's headlines. And tomorrow on Citizens Forum, starting at 9:15, we're having Senator Adegbenga Shefiu Kaka, former senator representing Ogun East Senatorial District. Together, we'll be looking at the ongoing constitutional amendment and other sundry issues. Have a wonderful day. For me, I say Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year in advance once again. I am Tobi Joseph.